crossed. Oshawa wants to rename Bagot Street. Why? Because of racism. Actually, the reason that they're renaming everything is because that's what communists do. They rename everything. And Biden is wearing a MAGA hat. So yeah, there's lots going on. First, I have a mashup here of immigration and housing. Pierre Poilievre talking about housing, and Jagmeet Singh's brother talking about racism. And I originally kind of thought like they're related loosely, but they're not really tightly related. I just put them into one group because they kind of loosely related, but I could probably break them into three sub-stories, but I'm not going to because that would take me 5 minutes, and that's 5 minutes I just don't have this morning. So don't be fooled by this one long block. It's actually three little blocks, and it's a little bit more nuanced, but we're going to start with immigration invasion. What's going on about the Haitian migrants in Springfield? What's going on in other American towns? And what's going on in New Brunswick? What's going on in New Brunswick, you ask? They used to have 300 migrants, 300 refugees, whatever you want to call them. And now the Trudeau government wants to increase that by 300% and bring in 4,000 people. And Higgs says, we can't do this. This is not a good idea. And why is it not a good idea? Well, let's look to our southern neighbor to find out firsthand why it's a terrible idea. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. America 2100 says it isn't just Springfield that's having its pets kidnapped by Haitian migrants and eaten by Haitian migrants. It's Charlevoix, I'm saying that probably wrong, Pennsylvania as well, a low-income town of just 4,000 people. The immigrant population has increased by 2,000% over the past 2 years, and it's almost all Haitians. Here's what one Charleroi councilman told us today. So this is what's going on, and I'm just trying to give you as fulsome an account of what's going on and how bad it could be from case studies that are happening in other places, but could easily happen here. Here we go.
The sad part about all this thing, and honestly, I don't care. I'll shoot straight from the hip. Frankly, I wish I could come face to face for 60 seconds, okay, with whoever was behind all this and bringing the immigrants in to Charleroi for only one reason. Where the hell's the money should be coming to Charleroi? Okay, why was it all dumped on us and we're not being funded with anything? Okay, and again, we can't even meet with our budget. And so now, where are we going to get this extra revenue to pay for it? You know, and then we've got to do all these things to accommodate the immigrants. That's bullshit.
Okay, so that's happening in America, and he says, why is this happening? What is going on? Mark Miller, in this is National Post, says Ottawa looks to relocate refugees to provinces outside of Ontario and Quebec, says the National Post, right? So, oh gosh, they have to go somewhere. Where are they going to go? New Brunswick. New Brunswick to get 4,600 asylum seekers, up from 384. And Higgs says, no, thank you. Chris says New Brunswick currently has 384 refugees, but Justin Trudeau's government plans to increase that number by 4,600, a staggering 12-time increase. Blaine Higgs says, breaking, Liberals propose sending 4,600 asylum seekers to New Brunswick without financial support. Even with financial support, that's a hard no for me, dog. Yesterday, provincial officials were invited to a conference call. We should just stop and, the provincial officials, I was going to say we should just stop inviting the feds to conference calls, and that might stop all this nonsense. It was the other way around. So the provincial officials were invited by the feds to a conference call in which it was shared by the federal officials in Ottawa that Prime Minister Trudeau's Liberal government is considering a plan to send 4,600 asylum seekers to New Brunswick without providing any federal financial assistance. This is an increase of more than 10 times our current level of asylum seekers. I wonder, just quick pause and thought game. If the Premier says, I'll store them in a hangar until I have enough planes to fly them home, if that's the response, do you think Trudeau would stop? Do you think that he would start legal proceedings against the Premier for threatening to fly out his new voters? Or do you think that there'd be a consequence to that? Do you think that a Premier could and should have a plan like that? Like, listen, I've already negotiated with Kuala Lumpur or somewhere. There's places, where is it that the Conservative government in the United Kingdom had negotiated to send asylum seekers back to blank, right? There. or wherever, right? Premiers could do that. I mean, I'm sure they couldn't do that, but if prime ministers can break the immigration law and start flooding provinces with people, provinces can solve that problem and do it in a way that is, I don't know, efficient, right? So yeah, okay, we'll keep the hangar warm and then fly them out because nope, like you can send them, but they're not going to stay. And do you think that people would get upset? Right? Probably everybody would lose their minds. Everybody would just like, it would be, you could hear a pin drop and somebody like ask, are you serious? Like, yeah, I'm serious. Drop the plans. Do it now. How much to rent the hangar because they're not going into Gen Pop? How much to have security? How much to get planes ready to go? I want 3 to 5 fueled and ready to go and get 5 to 10 other countries on the phone. I want to have a conversation with their leadership because we're flying some planes there. Like, okay, back to Higgs. Okay, he didn't say any of that. That was just me thinking about it. New Brunswick is a welcoming province that embraces immigration. This next sentence is important. Immigration has been key to our economic success as a province. Listen, they're economically incentivized. He's not saying they can't come. He's saying, I need money for them to come. He's saying, immigration is the reason for our province's economic success. He's not saying this can't happen. Okay. He's saying money, please. Okay. But this would stretch our education, healthcare systems far beyond what they can handle. And we do not have enough housing to make sure both newcomers and people currently living in New Brunswick have a roof over their heads. We are calling on the Liberal government to drop this plan and instead deal with the backlog of asylum claims that their failed policies have created. Like, I think that we should probably solve this situation in a different way. He's saying we have to stop this plan. So he's not just asking for money. I misspoke. Apologies to Mr. Higgs. But he is saying we should stop the plan. What happens when the asylum seekers show up? What then? Right? And it seems like once that bell gets rung, you can't unring it. Right? They show up and then all of a sudden you have to find a place for them. And then they're there. And then all of a sudden it's been years and you're in legal battles to get them out. And suddenly they've had children and multiple children and they're contributing members of society, except they leave out the part of the percentage of them that are working and not, and so on and so forth, which you can look up yourself if you're interested. So it seems like, I don't know how you stop this nonsense when the federal government doesn't obey the laws of the land and saddles the provinces with just dealing with their illegal policies and trying to fight it. Well, good luck. I mean, have you seen the Senate and the judiciary? Have you paid attention to those mischief decisions, right? I don't think the judges are on the side of sanity at this point in time. I think they're just on blindly the liberal side about everything. So that's what Higgs is saying. The economic engine, right? The economic success as a province really stuck out to me, and here's why. Oilfield Rando says the head of the nonprofit Haitian Bridge Alliance is quoted, and this is in Ohio, as saying the Haitian immigrants who started moving to Springfield the last few years are the reason why the economy and labor force has been revitalized there. They're the economic engine of Springfield, right? Ignore the fact that they occasionally steal, kidnap, and eat your pets. Here's the revenue from 2018 to 2022. So this is an NGO, the nonprofit Haitian Bridge Alliance. They're saying Haitian immigrants bring nothing but benefit and prosperity. And in 2018, they had $25,000 in funding. In 2022, they had $4 million in funding. In 2021, they had three and a bit million. In 2021, they had $1.5 million. 2019, they had 71,000. So this thing's ramped up, and all of a sudden, somebody's dumping money into this. Where's that coming from? And they're saying the same thing as Higgs, right? And it's a little different, right? They're specifically talking about Haitians, where Higgs is saying the immigrants into the province, which could be interprovincial migration, just like people moving from Ontario to New Brunswick or Ontario to Alberta. That's interprovincial, and that helps the economy, right? Danielle Smith wants to double the province's population, right? So, but does she care if they come from Haiti or not? Because that might matter, right? Like, so it's interesting, but it seems like it rhymes. It seems like there's echoes of exactly the same thing that's happening here, exactly the same thing that's happening in Springfield, Ohio, same thing that's happening in that first place that we were talking about that I messed up the name. So it's weird, the parallels. It's weird how similar it all is. It seems unlikely that it just kind of happened organically all by itself, right? Unlikely indeed. Breaking 911 says Ohio Governor Mike DeWine is deploying state troopers and $2.5 million to Springfield amid surges of Haitian migrants. So now the Ohio governor is saddled with this money. The federal government's not doing a damn thing about it. Seems a lot like Canada. Back to this. The federal government has not demonstrated that they have any kind of plan to deal with the issue. They're just flooding the place, right? If the Ohio governor said, listen, I've talked to the president of fill in the blank, and I've got a hangar, and we're going to fill the hangar with migrants, just like that Star Trek episode when they beamed up all the people from the one planet and put them in the holodeck, and then Riker totally seduced the daughter of the tribe's the daughter of the tribe leader, right? And he got to wash her feet, right? You know, you just store them in the holodeck or whatever, or store them in the cargo hold. What's the problem? If Star Trek can do it, and they had the prime directive, we could do it, right? No problems. No problem. What are you talking about, Captain? I present to you Exhibit 1, Captain Picard visiting the people stored in the storage area. Okay, come on. If it was good enough for Captain Picard, it's good enough for me, for crying out loud. Jeepers creepers. Look at, everybody was so happy. Look at what the daughter did with Riker. Come on. Anyway, it's a whole letter, and I feel it's a solid plan. I don't want to dehumanize people. I'm not saying like make them live in squalor. I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. You can give them some cats? No, just kidding. I'm kidding. It's serious. It's serious. There's seriousness. You give them food and then figure out a way to unring the bell. And there have been people who've been talking about plans on ways to actually productively do that. I'm joking, tongue firmly in cheek. Anyway, DeWine is saying in a long letter that he's going to send lots of money to Ohio, Springfield, to talk about this. Now, here is a woman who is Haitian and American, and she says her dad came to America in the 60s, and they don't talk anymore, but here's what's going on. The voodoo rituals and the threats of people casting voodoo spells on you, that's, man, have you seen Thinner? I'm not a big Stephen King fan or anything like that, and I don't necessarily think that it's that direct, but there's stuff in the world. The world is much, much stranger than I think that we as our modern society think, right? Anyway, here's this lady, and it's long. I guess it's only 2 minutes. We're going to listen to probably about a minute of it, maybe a bit more, but here we go. Maybe the whole thing. Here we go.
My father immigrated from Haiti to the United States in the late 60s as a teenager, and I want to talk about these recent comments about the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio. First, I want to say my father and I are now estranged, but I did know him in my very, very young years, and when he immigrated, he was one person, and they weren't sending, thousands of Haitians in one area. He wasn't eating people's pets, and he didn't practice voodoo, but he did say that most of the island, the majority of the island, does practice voodoo. The reason they eat cats is for 2 reasons. Number 1 is survival. This is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. You can't just go to a food bank like you can here, or just go to McDonald's and get some free or cheap food, unless of course there's a Christian missionary there. People in the United States have a really hard time imagining that type of thing, but it is true. Second, they do animal sacrifices for their religion, voodoo. They make these animal sacrifices to these gods for different reasons. You can do your own research on this. Do I think voodoo is a demonic religion? Yes, I do. That doesn't mean that you hate these people. These people need prayer. But you can't just take over all these people from another country and expect it to work. Not to mention, it doesn't fix the problems of that country. And there's more people left in Haiti that we can bring over. It's not racist to acknowledge that this is a problem. It's not racist to talk about these things that are happening. This is not just white Americans saying this is Black Americans. You can look at the people in Springfield, Ohio saying that this is happening. Y'all just want to joke about Trump and say that he's crazy for saying that this is happening instead of actually checking at all to see if this is happening.
Right. The breaking of reality is an interesting aspect of this whole thing as well. I regret my cat joke. I'm sorry. But it's one of those things, like the reality of this whole situation is very interesting because the powers that be don't want it even to be real. right? Here is a person from Springfield, and they're talking about this whole thing. She says that she saw a decapitated pig's head in the park, and she's talking here. I'll rewind to that part because that's interesting as well. She's talking about Haitian adults being in her daughter's middle school or high school class. Here we go.
People, the education system, it's terrible, and we've got adults going to school at the high school.
Can you
There were
explain that a little
fights
bit?
the first day. There are illegals. They're from 19 to 23 years old going to our high school.
That's a little unusual. I don't think I've ever heard that before.
My 10-year-old granddaughter has a 16-year-old in her class.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does that raise safety concerns for you?
It raises many safety concerns for me. And like I said, all the women and females in Springfield, I don't care how old you are. Obviously, I'm 58 and I've been accosted.
Can you explain kind of what happened in that situation?
Well, I have lived on the south end of Springfield my whole entire life. It is the majority of the population is black. I've never had any problems. I was at a store a few days ago on South Limestone Street. I was attacked. I was called racist because I'm white. That was their reasoning, because I'm white.
Wow. And then you had mentioned about, being...
And she talks about being attacked in a store. Oh, hold on. I'm going to find the pig's head thing. He's asking her about what she has personally seen, because she's talked about friends of hers who have seen people eating cats. And he says, no, what have you seen? And she says, oh, I saw a decapitated pig's head.
A lot of allegations of animals going missing, ducks being basically
Yes, sir.
taken.
There's pictures of that too.
Can you speak on that? Have you ever seen that in person?
I've seen, the only thing I've seen, I did see a pig's head laying down in Snyder Park.
You saw a pig's head?
A pig's head.
Like it had been cut off? Or?
Yes, sir.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't really see that every day, do you?
No, you don't. It's kind of surprising.
So there you go. Pig's heads and things like that. Voodoo rituals, right? Cut off pig's heads. Also, what was it? The Godfather, right? You get in bed and then your prize horse's head is in there. I mean, that's not, maybe you like bacon. It's a whole thing, right? So not great. And the other part of this is the video I showed of the police rolling up on the people eating cats. The people said, yeah, we saw her eating cats. So all of this stuff, not necessarily as bad as Springfield, but I don't understand why it couldn't get as bad as Springfield. Like, Springfield is a town in the United States, and these terrible, awful things are happening, and people in the United States are arguing whether it's actually happening or not, right? Like whether it's a conspiracy theory that crazy old Trump's talking about, or if it's an actual thing that's happening. And it seems like it is an actual thing that's happening. I believe that it is happening. There seems to be ample evidence to support this thing that's happening. And that's all being just kind of ignored. And that's really like wild. That's pretty crazy. Like, you have to consider how crazy that is. Okay, so let's talk about housing, right? So housing is kind of similar to the invasion. Like, on one side, that's kind of very cultural. And, all of what's happening there, from 16-year-olds in class with 10-year-olds to decapitated pig's head to voodoo to eating pets and things like that, all just incredibly wild, but doesn't have anything to do with housing or any of the other problems that are inherent, that are very practical, and like you can feel them and see them on spreadsheets a little bit more. Here's Pierre Poilievre talking about housing stock. Brian Lilly says Pierre Poilievre says he'll cap Canada's immigration numbers until the housing supply catches up. Then the cap will be tied to housing starts and builds. Do you agree with this? And here's Poilievre. It's just a minute, so we'll listen to the whole thing. Here we go.
We will cap population growth so that the stock always grows faster than the population. We'll have exact numbers in the next election, but we're building like 240,000 homes. That's like 1.4% increase in our housing supply. You can't grow the population faster than that unless you're going to have worse housing shortages. So we've been, under Trudeau and the NDP, we've been growing the population by almost 3%, but we grow the housing stock by 1.3, 1.4%. No wonder we're running out of homes. That's not even a question of whether you support or not immigration. It's a question of whether you support mathematics. And humans need homes, and I don't care where they come from. It doesn't matter if you've been here for 2 days or your family's been here for 2 centuries. You need a place to live. The only way to get rid of the shortage is to build homes faster than we add people, and that's why we will have a mathematical formula that caps population growth below the growth in the housing stock.
Mathematical formula. It's a very creative way to get around talking about how the only way to stop this problem is to stop immigration. He is now saying very weaselly words in exactly like the conclusion is the same, right? You cannot bring in more people than there are available houses, right? If you bring in 3% of the population, to use his mathematical formula, and you can only build 1.3 increase, right? You can only build the housing for 1.3, then you're gonna have a bad time, right? You're gonna have a problem. And so fundamentally it's sound, but it dodges the problem of having to talk about immigration directly and saying the way to solve this problem is to turn off immigration, right? Now it's a mathematical solution. It's a mathematical formula that we're going to apply to immigration, and we're going to have the best immigration in the world. And I mean, like, politically, it's smart because it makes him difficult to hit. The newspapers can't write a smear campaign because in order to do that, they have to engage with the mathematics, right? And so if they do write the smear piece, then Poilievre can just respond with the mathematics rather than an emotional, we have to turn off immigration, and then he gets blamed for blaming the immigrants, which is obviously not what's happening, but the news will spin it that way. So I mean, it's good protection and smart, politically smart, and there you go. Like, he's doing politics in Canada better than most politicians in Canada can do it. Trudeau is, I mean, a great puppet, I guess, and he's being kept in power by very, very powerful people. But Poilievre, he's smart and he's delivered. I mean, credit where it's due. Honestly, it's a smart way to frame it, and I haven't seen it framed that way yet. And well done. Well done. Maxime Bernier is responding to this. He says, Pierre found out only 3 minutes ago that there was a housing problem when population grows 3 times faster than the number of houses. That's all he's willing to talk about. He never addresses the fact that mass immigration is also destroying our social cohesion, our social programs, our sense of security, our culture, our national identity. He's too busy pandering to immigrant groups. Bernier makes some great points, right? He's now more in favor of uncontrolled immigration than the Liberals. He's a two-faced fraud who can't be trusted to do anything about it. Support the PPC to make sure we have a mass immigration election rather than the carbon tax election, right? So that's interesting, and it's valid criticisms from Mr. Bernier, if you ask me as well. Here is Jagmeet Singh's brother. Jagmeet Singh's brother is saying that there's racists everywhere. So this is the third of the 3 things that culturally and kind of spiritually are all aligned under the immigration banner. He's saying that racists in the far right conservative camp are against Sikhs. And I think that there are a lot of Sikhs in the Conservative Party of Canada. Aren't there like 19 Sikhs or something like that in the Conservative Party? And like 25 in the Liberal Party? I could be wrong about those numbers. And like 48? Does that work? 48 in the government, right? I think that might be right, but that's totally off the top of my head and could be well off. Regardless, I'm sure that there are I saw a chart recently talking about how many Sikhs, how many Hindus, how many like different people representing in Canada's government. And I thought it was a very interesting thing. And so for people to claim, like Jagmeet Singh's brother here, that there's racism because he saw a sign while walking around is, I mean, rich. It's rich. One of the things that I think we could do to get rid of this supposed racism is to stop pandering to everybody based on their skin color and or religion, and then treat everybody as if they're individual people who the law applies to equally, just like me and you and them, all people. It doesn't matter if you're a Muslim or a Sikh or Hindu or Christian or Jew, whatever it is, the law applies to you too. If you do something that's against the law and somebody says, did you do that thing? And you say, yes, the law applies to you just like it would anybody else, right? I think that would be much better than the system that we've got. It's like, oh, hold on, you were oppressed. So it says here on page 124, subsection 3, paragraph 9, this law doesn't apply to you. Oh, your skin is the right color. I didn't notice before, right? Like, oh my gosh. No, that's the wrong way to do it. And it breeds this kind of stuff, right? It encourages, incentivizes this kind of crap. Gurtan Singh says the right-wing conservative agenda attacking Sikhs is alarming. What? I try not to attack anybody on this show, not even Haitians. Really, I did, despite the cat joke. I'm sorry. But I don't try to attack anybody on this show. I don't try and go after people. I try and point out how hypocritical they are. I try and point out how hilariously ridiculous a job these people do in their positions. And like, I don't even consider myself that far right. Although I think that if you asked people, I would be considered far right, but I don't even consider myself that far right. I think it's just common sense sanity. Anybody would say, yeah, there are two genders, sexes, whatever you want to call it. Like these things exist, so on and so forth. The whole far right smear to me is a red flag. Anyway, back to this. So right-wing conservative agenda attacking Sikhs. I don't know where he gets it from, but okay. Hate starts online. Oh, and then spills into real life. Okay. Is pointing out hypocrisy hate? We must stand against these attacks, whether directed at Sikhs or any other community, except that one community that you're definitely allowed to be very discriminatory against. We are stronger when we stand together. Yeah, I don't. There's something weird about this. Daniel says, I'll say it, 99.999% chance that Jagmeet Singh's brother is pulling a Jussie Smollett here. And if you don't get the reference, well, I can't help you. And Greg says, who receives more hate in Canada, Sikhs or white Canadians? I don't know that it is not in my world we're more hated, you're more hated, they're more hated. It's not a hate Olympics. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that it's a contest or anything to that effect. The statues being torn down, in my opinion, aren't attacking white Canadians as such. It's attacking Canadian culture. It's a communist attack. And I mean, the racial conflict that's born of this, and that there are a lot of people, Diagolon, participating in it. There are a lot of people who are going really hard on the race side of things, and like, they're terrible, you're terrible. And like, that's not it. The communists just want to destroy the culture, and they're doing that through these conflicts, right? And like, again, it's not about who's more hated. It's about destroying what we built, right? And what we built, we did together. Everybody worked together. Like, men and women worked together to build their families, and their families built the communities, and the communities built the wonderful country that I remember from when I was growing up, right? Like, it wasn't built by a Trudeau. It wasn't built by a Pearson or a Diefenbaker or Clark or anything like that. It wasn't built by a prime minister. It was built by the people who were doing the things, right? And like, the people disagreed on religion. That's why freedom of religion was a thing in Canada, because people should be free to celebrate and worship their own version of Christianity, I think was the initial intent. And then it got broadened out, and then the multiculturalism stuff got added in 1987. And honestly, I mean, that's why my parents met, right? So like, I'm a first generation Canadian, and I'm not saying immigration's great or anything to that effect, but to me, it's not necessarily about skin color, because Canada, going back to, when the country was founded, you had the French settlers in Quebec, you had the English settlers in the rest of the country, you had the Maritimes, you had the First Nations, so on and so on and so forth. There's a lot of people, a lot of competing interests, and still we figured out how to make a free country. And the secret sauce wasn't necessarily in the skin color or anything like that, right? It was, I don't even know what it is. I couldn't describe it because, well, I don't know. It's probably way too outside of this podcast. But what was built through whatever influence was great. And it had some kind of foundation on freedom, right? On your ability to be successful while building your family, while building your community. I think that's the cornerstone of it. Like, that you can say what you want, that you can be successful selling things that are pretty wide open market for the most part. And it's not about this homogenous group, but more about this ideal. I'm very clumsy today. I'm sorry. It's not as on point as normal. Anyway, moving on, let's talk about the election. Not Jagmeet Singh. Pierre Poilievre is calling out Jagmeet Singh, and he's saying time to drop the government. He says, listen, you've ended the supply and confidence agreement, and it's time to drop the government, and let's do that as soon as possible. And Jagmeet Singh says no, because you're mean. That's basically it. So here's Pierre Poilievre.
So the question that Jagmeet Singh has been asked 31 times in the last week, and he has refused to answer, is whether he will vote non-confidence to trigger a carbon tax election. Now, why is that? Well, let's just inspect the timing here for a second. He did his video 2 days before voting started in those by-elections, trying to trick people into thinking he was no longer part of the coalition. The by-elections will be held on Monday, after which he can just change his mind and go back to voting to keep Trudeau in power. So I have an announcement and a challenge. I'm announcing that Common Sense Conservatives will put forward a non-confidence motion at the earliest possible opportunity. And I'm asking Jagmeet Singh and the NDP to commit unequivocally before Monday's by-elections. Will they vote non-confidence to bring down the costly coalition and trigger a carbon tax election? Or will Jagmeet Singh sell out Canadians again? Which will it be? It's put up or shut up time for the NDP. There will be a carbon tax election, and in it, Canadians will decide whether they keep the NDP Liberals in power to tax your food, punish your work, double your housing cost, unleash crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder on our streets. Will they vote for a 61-cent a litre carbon tax? Or will they elect a common sense Conservative government that will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime? And we need to bring them down now, because otherwise carbon tax Carney's agenda will predominate.
So there you go. There's urgency. He says we need to bring them down now. And it's the other aspect of this is he's putting a price on the carbon tax, saying 61 cent per liter tax needs to be axed, so on and so forth. That connects it to you. You understand that better than the carbon tax will increase. What will it increase to? This. How is that going to impact me? 61 cents a liter. So that's good, because people don't necessarily consciously connect those dots, but they do get connected. Here's Jagmeet Singh responding. I think this is a dumb response. Like, he makes himself sound silly every time he opens his mouth, honestly. Here's Jagmeet Singh.
Your response to what he said today, specifically, if the NDP should put up or shut up?
I say directly to Pierre Poilievre, I'm not going to listen to you, someone who wants to destroy our healthcare system, who wants to hurt seniors by cutting their pensions, someone who wants to attack workers, someone who wants to strip away dental care from seniors. What kind of person wants to strip away dental care when seniors have just gotten it, when kids are receiving it? Who wants to take that away from them? I'm never going to listen to someone like that. So no, I'm not going to listen to your advice. You want to destroy people's lives. I want to build up a brighter future. I want to build a better future for Canadians.
Did you see that straw man that he built? Like, I don't think that any of that addressed anything that Pierre Poilievre said. So I don't know how anybody could trust Jagmeet Singh, because he is a snake. Right. Here is TR Guy, and he says, I wish Pierre Poilievre would clarify why he wants a carbon tax election. Why isn't he calling for a UN Paris Agreement election, since it's all about carbon pricing? Why isn't he calling for a mass immigration election, since it's killing Canadians? Because he's a UN puppet, that's why. So there are lots of people who think that he's a UN puppet, or that he's a WEF, the other side of the liberal coin, right? He'll continue to run the UN 2030 agenda. I think that's probably true. I haven't seen any indication really, other than him saying that he won't do that. A lot of his behavior and the people that he has around him are people who have WEF contacts, affiliates, et cetera, and it's strange. Like Michelle Rempel, et cetera. There are a whole lot of concerning connections bared, and with all of those connections intact, saying no, I won't prioritize that advice, kind of falls flat to me. Global Edmonton says, hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful